I always wanted to be a drag racer.
She earned her place in drag racing history, no question.
The car really just disintegrated around her.
The accident was so horrific that I think the question was she going to live?
She started out young. She loved horses, liked speed.
When she was old enough to attract the boys, and they had cars, and they would go out and race down the road.
I was the only girl out there that was racing the boys.
And my friends would say, "Oh, aren't you scared? Don't you want her to stop?" And I'd say, "No, that's what she wants, and I'm not going to interfere." Then it began to get bigger and bigger. From a street car, to a funny car, to a dragster.
Yeah, you have to remember, when she was starting out in the mid-'60s, women were still basically supposed to be, stay at home and,
That wasn't my goal, to prove anything. All I wanted to do was get a chance to be a big-time drag racer. Little did we know what this whole thing was going to turn into.
My first encounter with her was back in the mid-1970s when I was just starting out as a reporter, and she scared the hell out of me.
She has got a very powerful mouth on her, and that was one of the big tools she used. She was tough. She was very tough, and she had to be to survive.
She started winning meets, and it just went on from there.
And then as she got more competitive, she kind of showed the boys how it was done.
The most exciting form of motorsports in the world. And I get to see it from a front row seat.
Drag racing is 1,320 feet of pure hell. It's getting from point A to point B as quick as you can.
All this time, all this effort, all this money, everything together, it's now in my hands. I get the last word, and it better be good. Well, you're dealing with about a 2,000-pound missile. Don't screw up, don't make any mistakes.
There are major league explosions going on in that engine.
They're running cars above 330 miles an hour in a quarter mile, 4.5, 4.6 seconds. Incredible feat.
I had heard of Shirley when I was a little girl. I had posters of her and little pins and T-shirts and everything. I just knew it was something that I could possibly do when I grew up.
When she became the first woman to win an NHRA professional category national event title, that was in 1976 in Columbus, Ohio. She came back the following year, became the first woman to win an NHRA World Championship. And then she added 2 more season championships back in the early 80s.
Since then, there have been many females that have come out, and I think it just really opened the doors for all of us.
There's a lot of variables out there that are involved in putting a car down the race course the way it should be.
There's no room for errors because you're producing over 7,000 horsepower for this motor. And if something goes wrong, it blows up, kaboom, she could be hurt instantaneously.
These cars are not toys. They can hurt you. And the majority of the drivers out here, a lot of them, have no idea how fast they're going. Little did we know what this whole thing was going to turn into.
We were in Montreal in 1984, and in those days, the racetracks weren't near as safe as they are today.
She was at the top of her game. Speeds of the cars were increasing dramatically, and unfortunately the technology of the tires and some of the things on the vehicles were not able to keep up with the speeds of the car.
We had a tire problem on the front tire, and a tube came out and became entangled in the steering in the front, and it just took the front wheels and turned them like this and made an immediate left-hand turn.
There was no guardrail from the finish line on. Right at the finish line is where the guardrail ended. We needed that guardrail down there to contain the car.
And the car lost no speed and went down into the ditch and impacted.
But it was nasty. I mean, it was a question of whether she's going to live or die.
I remember hitting twice, and then from that point on, I was out.
And the car really just disintegrated around her, exposing her legs. And basically the only thing left of the car was the seat that she was sitting in. And she tumbled for 600 or 700 or 800 feet like that.
I remember waking up and I was on my side in what was left of the car. And it was just pieces everywhere.
We left the next morning from Montreal. I didn't expect to see what I saw. She looked terrible. Both legs were in casts and this and that, and of course she didn't know. She didn't know us. She was unconscious. She didn't know nothing. She looked pretty bad.
It was pretty hairy for a while. You know, she went through quite a bit. Mom and I would travel back and forth.
Initially, they weren't sure if I was going to walk. 7 months later, I still had the risk of losing my right leg.
When the accident first happened, I didn't want to see any drag racing anymore. I didn't want anything to do with it. But as time went on, and she was having to go through these therapies and being confined to a wheelchair and not being able to fend for herself, the thought of not being able to come back and race was tough on her.
I needed a light at the end of the tunnel.
And the light at the end of the tunnel for her was getting back and racing. So I changed my position and said, well, if that's what you want to do and if that's what it's going to take to make you better, then that's what we'll do.
So it helped me get through those awful months. You know, you go from the cast to a brace, crutches to a walker. I mean, it was just a lot of steps.
A lot of rehabilitation, a lot of surgeries, and just a lot of determination on her part to go through the physical therapy and the pain and all those kind of things that that she had to do to be able to come back.
18 months later, I was back in a race car.
I think the first time she raced after that was at a track I used to work for outside of Phoenix, Arizona. It was the biggest crowd they ever had at that track. People were parked on the freeway just to see her come back.
It was like I was never out of the car.
Boy, when I saw her get in that car, starting the engine up, I knew she was going to go back into it.
And I just thought it was amazing that after such a bad crash, she had come back and got right back in the car and did it again.
It was a life-changing experience. She ended up marrying Ron Tobler, who was her crew chief, who was a great influence on her, and together they make a great couple.
Ron is really, I mean, again, he's the heart of the whole thing. Without him, I would have been gone from racing years ago.
Well, she's very determined and, you know, very focused.
Done my share of winning, and there aren't a lot of lady drivers out there that can say that.
As long as she is good at what she does, and she is that, she's very good at what she does, no, I don't really see her retiring. I thought it would be before this.
And they've just gone on, and they're still running with the boys.